Everyone has the potential to hear the voice of God. God speaks in several different ways. He speaks through people. He speaks through circumstances or things that are around us. I think it's important to understand that your particular relationship with the Lord is unique to you, that because someone else may say that they heard the voice of God in a resounding way doesn't mean that you have to think that that's how He's going to communicate with you. No, as I said earlier, your walk with God is a love relationship. It's something uniquely different that no one else can mimic or take your place and try to do what God has called you to do specifically. Your fingerprint is unique. So you learn what is it and how is it that God uniquely has a tendency to communicate to you. He uses things that we're familiar with. The way He talks to me could be uniquely different than how He talks to you. I could reflect on one of my first stories when He was first teaching me to learn of Him. And that's the grace of God, that He teaches us to learn His way. I share with you that one of my lowest points was when my mother died. And right after that, I was laid off from work within a 6-month period. So I got hit with the loss of my mother and then the loss of my job, which for me were the two big pillars in my life at the time. You know, I held on to my job and I held on to my mother, and they were both gone within a short span of time. And I could see where the Lord was teaching me to hold on to Him, that He was. I can recall during my prayer time that He had shared with me that I was to stay put and not try to, move anywhere. To church, and I can recall the pastor saying, she said some very definitive words, something to the effect that there's a stirring in the atmosphere and change is taking place. And then she started to talk about breakthrough. There's a breakthrough at that particular time. Well, at that same time that she said that, my phone went off in the congregation. I could hear it in my purse. And when I got home to look at my message, what it was that a message from someone in a corporation who told me that they established a job for me. They created a job for me. So right at that exact moment, when that pastor was professing that there was a change in the atmosphere, my phone started to ring, and there was a message for me which let me know that a job had been created for me. And it was a job which I didn't even interview for. So I knew it was God. But because we learn to interview for jobs, have our resume, the set pattern of the world. I received a voicemail and email that says, I've created a job for you. And that was after I was laid off. So I began to then trust a lot more in the Lord. As I was learning, I was also walking in a level of faith and belief, and I had made up my mind to make up my mind. I can recall saying something to the Lord like, if He didn't save me, if He didn't come through, that I was going to drown. I've come to learn now that it's that 100% level in faith in the Lord that He wants us to get to, where we have no other options but His option. We think we have a simple understanding of something. Our natural minds will tend to sway there, and it will pull us off course. So God kind of radically pulls us into position. During just radical belief in Him, listening to the pastor when she spoke that word, having an understanding that God can use people to talk to us, that I heard His voice through someone else. And then after that, He began to develop me in my prayer time, where I could become more sensitive to hearing Him speak to me in my spirit. To know a little bit about me is to know that the fear of the Lord that I have is so high. I would never try to promote myself or intentionally, say that I'm going to mask something and I'm going to put God's name on it. I love Him too much and walk in too high of a level of the fear of the Lord to masquerade in that fashion. I would hear Him. I prayed over every segment, every day, every paragraph. I would write, I would stop, what I was hearing, and I would pray and ask questions of the Lord. What is it that you want to say to your child today, Father? Please guide me and show me. I would always pray. That's why you would see in this devotional, it's not only a devotional that gives you a daily lesson, it's a devotional that is intertwined with prayer, because that's how it was written. I take very seriously when I use the words co-labor with God, and you can see in the dedication that it was a labor of love where I had the opportunity. I consider it a privilege and an opportunity to co-labor with Him, hear His voice, and then carry out His instructions. So that was the spirit of my heart. Was not me simply, when you write a story and you're creating and you just tend to write for long periods of time and use your imagination. It was birthed in prayer. I would pray a lot. I have a spiritual mother. I would pray a lot with her. And all along during this quiet time, the intensity of my relationship with the Lord was growing, and my ear was being attuned to listen to Him even more closely. So I know that I could not have written a manuscript in like 6 to 8 weeks, whatever, that short period of time. I know that I had no preconceived notions of faintly, remotely thinking of publishing something that I've written. The inspiration for this work simply came from God, wanting to reach His people. And that's how my prayers also began to change. I began to cry out for humanity. I began to cry out and say, Lord, what is it that you want to speak to your people about? Some things were written in tears. I can feel it now. Because as He would give me messages, I would feel it, and I so very much wanted people to connect with His heart. The goodness that I've come to know is so good that you feel like you want to shout it from the rooftop. And there are so many people who think that there's no way for them, that their life couldn't be better, or that, they've listened to naysayers or negativity. And I consider it to be a privilege to co-labor with God, to be His instrument, to be the instrument that He's chosen for this particular time, to do this particular project where He can touch people in the way that He wants to. It's not me touching them. It's Him reaching out to them and sharing His love. I was just a hand.